The stars were silent. Cold. Endless. Wreckage floated in the dark like bones of a dead army. Metal drifted slowly across the black sky, burned ships, broken engines, shattered dreams. The war had ended here, and humanity had lost. Only one ship remained. It was hidden inside the shadow of a destroyed cruiser, power offline, engines cold. The hull was blackened from battle, its symbol, Earth's blue circle, scratched but still there. The name on the side was barely readable, USS Valor. Inside, the ship was quiet. Emergency lights glowed dim red. Most of the crew was asleep or unconscious in their stations. Life support was weak. They had not moved in 2 days. Commander Elena sat in the captain's chair. Her face was tired, her short hair was messy, her eyes full of pain and fire. She stared at the main screen. Nothing but black space and wreckage. "Still no signal?" she asked. A young officer looked up from the console. His voice was dry. "No, ma'am. No friendly ships. No colonies. Just static." Elena stood up, slowly. Her boots echoed on the metal floor. She looked around the bridge. Only 6 people were there. The rest of her crew were in the lower decks, resting, healing, or already gone. She took a breath. "We are the last," she said. No one answered. They all knew it already. The alien enemy, the Zarkali, had destroyed Earth's fleets one by one. No mercy, no warning. They came from deep space with massive ships and brutal weapons. They called humanity young fire, and they came to burn it out. Valor had escaped the final battle barely alive. Its weapons were gone, shields broken, engines leaking fuel. It was not a warship anymore. It was a ghost. A voice came from the comm station. "Commander, we're picking up movement. 5 ships, Zarkali class, coming this way." Elena's eyes narrowed. "Time to contact?" 5 minutes. They're scanning the wreckage. Looks like they're hunting for survivors. The crew tensed. Some looked afraid, others angry. One officer whispered, "We can't fight them. Not like this." Elena didn't move. "Then we make them believe we're dead. Shut everything down." Full power cut. The lights faded. The hum of the engines died. Only silence remained. They waited, sitting in the dark, like prey, hiding in the forest. Outside, the alien ships moved slowly. Their glowing blue lights passed through the wreckage field. Long, sharp vessels with spinning sensor arrays scanned every piece of debris. One came close, very close. On the bridge, no one breathed. The officer's hands shook slightly as he watched the radar. The alien ship stopped only a few hundred meters from Valor's hiding spot. Then, it turned away. A sigh of relief filled the bridge. "They're moving past," the officer said. "Scanning, but not locking." A pause. "No, wait. One ship is coming back." Elena walked to the center of the bridge. "Bring emergency power back. Quietly. Prepare manual weapons." "But Commander, we don't have any working." "Just do it," she said, voice sharp. Systems came back online. Just enough power to move a turret. Enough to fire 1 shot. Maybe 2. The alien ship stopped just beyond the wreck of a destroyed human cruiser. Its lights focused forward, scanning the dark space ahead. "They're about to scan our hull," the tech officer whispered. Elena touched a panel. The crew watched as a hidden turret on the lower side of Valor turned slowly. It pointed straight at the alien ship's weak spot, the main scanner core right under the front hull. "Charge shot," Elena ordered. They charged it. It buzzed quietly. Lights flickered. The moment the alien ship's scanner powered up, Elena spoke 2 words. "Fire now." The ship shook as the turret fired. A single glowing shell launched through space and hit the alien scanner core. It exploded in a flash of blue light. Before the other Zarkali ships could respond, Elena shouted, "Full reverse! Activate rear thrusters!" Valor roared to life. Engines lit up. It pulled away fast from the wreckage field. Redirect power. "To shields! Now!" Lasers fired from the nearest alien ship, striking Valor's side. The shields sparked, barely holding. Another blast rocked the hull. Course heading 117, sublight speed. Get us into the asteroid belt. The pilot nodded, blood on his forehead. Valor flew through the Black Sea, dodging more lasers, moving faster than it should have. The old engine screamed. Metal groaned. But the ship moved. 2 Zarkali ships pursuing. Others are regrouping. Good, Elena said. Let them chase us. She turned to her tactical officer. Do we still have mines? 2 gravity mines and 1 decoy launcher. Drop 1 mine behind us. Set it to activate on Zarkali energy signature. They dropped the mine. A moment later, one of the chasing ships passed over it. Boom! The explosion lit up the area. The alien ship broke in half. The other pulled away, confused, scanning for traps. Valor entered the asteroid field. We'll lose them here, Elena said. She guided the ship between massive rocks using shadows and speed. The Zarkali tried to follow, but the asteroids were too thick. After 10 minutes of silent movement, the radar showed no enemies. They were alone again, but they were alive. On the bridge, the crew sat back in their seats. Some laughed quietly. Some just cried. Elena sat down slowly. Her hands shook slightly, but her eyes stayed strong. We're not dead, she said. We're not done. Commander, the tech officer said, you knew they'd come. Yes. And you planned this. Yes. The young man looked at her with respect. So, what now? She stared at the screen. The stars stretched out forever. Now we fight. But we're one ship. We're the last ship, she corrected him. And that means we have nothing left to lose. Silence. Then she added, let's make them remember that humanity doesn't die easy. In the lower decks, wounded, soldiers listened. Mechanics covered in grease stood still. A medic looked up from a patient. They heard her words through the speaker system, and they believed. The fire came back into their hearts. Valor was more than a ship now. It was a symbol. In the shadows of the galaxy, the Zarkali ruled. Their fleets spread across systems. Planets bowed to them. Civilizations surrendered. They thought the war was over, that the fire had gone out. But in the dark corners of space, one light still burned, and it was not going to fade quietly. A cold silence filled the bridge again. After escaping into the asteroid field, the crew of the last human warship worked in low light, fixing systems by hand, speaking only when needed. Everyone moved carefully. Even a loud sound felt dangerous. Commander Elena Cross stood near the window looking out at the floating rocks and distant stars. Her ship, the Valor, was hurt, but alive. One of the engines needed repairs. Shields were almost gone. Weapons were down to basics. Still, something had changed. The enemy had chased them. That meant something important. They're afraid, she said softly. No one answered, but they heard her. In the quiet, the ship's engineer climbed onto the bridge. His face was covered in dust, and his hands were full of tools. We've got the cooling systems working again, but we'll need time to get the reactor stable. Elena nodded. How long? Maybe 10 hours, maybe more. She walked toward the center screen. Start the repairs. Quietly. No big power jumps. We don't want to be found again. The engineer gave a short nod and left. The rest of the crew returned to their tasks. One officer scanned nearby space for signals. Another worked on restoring the communication relay. A soft alarm beeped. Commander, we're picking up background. Traffic, Zarkali fleet chatter. It's scrambled, but I can hear parts. Play it. A strange, distant voice came through the speaker. The words were harsh and metallic, full of confusion. Unknown signal. Human vessel. Not destroyed. Locate and confirm. The voice faded. They're looking for us, the officer said. Elena sat down. Her voice was calm. They can't believe we escaped. They don't understand how. The pilot turned his chair toward her. Why did we escape? I mean, we're outnumbered. They had full control of the sector. We should have been... Elena raised a hand. Because we're not like them. They follow patterns. They expect order. They don't expect people to keep going when everything's lost. She stood again. Maybe that's what makes us different. The crew was quiet. They were tired, some injured, some afraid, but they were listening now. Every word felt real. In the background, the AI system on the ship made a soft sound. A new alert blinked on the main screen. "What is that?" Elena asked. The officer checked the data. His eyes widened. "We just received a signal." Very old. Human code, buried deep in a relay satellite. Elena stepped forward. "Play it." The message was broken and weak, but clear enough to understand. "This is Colony Station Delta Echo. We survived, hiding under the surface. Can anyone hear us?" The bridge froze. Elena leaned closer. "Location? Far side of Sector 12. That's deep in Zarkali space, could be a trap." Elena's voice was steady. "Or it could be the start of something." She walked slowly across the bridge. "If someone out there is still alive, then we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore, we're fighting for them too." The crew looked at her with new eyes. Someone whispered, "What if we go there and don't make it back?" Elena turned. "Then at least we tried. At least we did something that mattered." She looked out the window again. "They think we're running. Let's make them think harder." She gave the order to set a course. It was risky. They'd have to pass through 2 enemy-controlled systems, hide in the shadows of moons, avoid patrols. The journey would take days, but they were already moving. Hours passed. Repairs continued. Power levels rose slowly. The ship moved between asteroid fields, hiding, waiting, then sprinting across empty space. At one point, they passed an old battlefield. Broken ships, both human and Zarkali, floated in silence. A burned-out colony station spun slowly, hit by something massive. No lights, no signs of life. But as they moved closer, the ship's scanners beeped. Energy spike. Small, low frequency. Could be a beacon. Elena gave the order to slow down. Carefully, they scanned the area. There was a signal. Weak. A human one. They sent a small probe. It returned with data. Inside the dead station, one room still had life support. Just one. Inside were 3 survivors. Elena watched their faces on the screen. Tired, dirty, but alive. She smiled for the first time in days. "Get them on board," she said. They brought them in. 2 engineers and a child. The engineers had been keeping the station alive just long enough to send that last signal. The child didn't speak for hours. Then she looked at Elena and asked, "Are we the only ones left?" Elena knelt in front of her. "No," she said. "We're the first ones coming back." The journey continued. Word spread. Quiet messages, hidden in old channels. Across space, other hidden groups began to whisper the same thing. A human ship survived. A single warship still moves, still fights, and it has a name, Valor. Even the enemy began to feel it. They didn't understand why it mattered, but they could feel something changing. Elena didn't care if they understood. She only cared that someone, somewhere, was still listening. Because when the last ship doesn't fall, the story isn't over. It's just beginning. The stars above looked calm, but every system inside the Valor was under pressure. The engines were running quiet. Weapons were offline to avoid detection. Power was low again, after helping the rescued survivors. Still, the ship moved forward, slowly, carefully, hiding in shadows. Commander Elena Cross sat at her station, going over star maps and old routes. Her crew had grown since they found 3 more survivors, including the child. Now the ship wasn't just running, it was carrying hope. And that changed everything. A new voice joined her on the bridge. One of the rescued engineers stepped forward holding a data chip. "We found this on the old station," he said. "It's part of a long-range signal map, shows hidden relays, places we can reach without being seen." Elena took the chip and placed it into the console. The screen lit up with a secret path through enemy territory. Hidden lines between old satellites, abandoned stations, deep asteroid paths. Most were outdated, but some were still blinking. If these are working, Elena said, we could move deeper, get close to their supply routes. One officer leaned forward. Commander, are you planning an attack? Elena didn't answer right away. She looked at the map, then at her crew. They've been chasing us, she said, trying to find us. But they don't expect us to move toward them. We have almost nothing left. That's why it will work. The crew was silent. Then the pilot smiled, just a little. All right, let's surprise them. The ship changed course again. Instead of heading to safety, it turned toward the edge of a known Zarkali staging area. It was a supply station, small, lightly guarded, but important. If they could make it look like an accident, if they could make the enemy believe a mistake happened, then fear would grow, and stories would spread. As Valor moved, they activated an old trick, a fake distress signal from a lost cargo ship. They sent the signal from an old probe, making it drift slowly toward the enemy post. The signal said one thing: life support failing, humans on board, request help. The Zarkali picked it up. Soon after, 2 enemy patrol ships moved to investigate. That's when the Valor made its move. Not with weapons, not with force, with light. The ship sent out a pulse that blinded scanners. It came from a side panel, reflecting off space dust and old wreckage. The enemy ships turned sharply, confused, reading it as a malfunction. Then the Valor activated a small gravity charge, not strong enough to damage, but enough to pull loose debris toward the station. From a distance, it looked like a fuel spill had triggered a reaction. The Zarkali ships retreated in confusion. Systems blinked. One ship powered down its scanners, another floated aimlessly, unable to respond. The supply post shut down all traffic. Security codes went red. Panic spread in the area. The Valor slipped past unseen. Back on the bridge, the crew watched the results on their screens. Elena said nothing at first. Then she gave a soft command. Send a shortwave message. Only 3 words. The officer asked, to who? Anyone listening? He sent it. The message was simple. We are here. Somewhere across space, a hidden human group received the signal. In a cold cave beneath a ruined colony, a small device blinked. A tired man looked. At the screen, he whispered, it's real. Others looked up from where they were hiding. The signal spread again. They began to believe. Meanwhile, the Zarkali commanders held private meetings. They couldn't understand how a single human ship was slipping through their space. Their maps showed no survivors, no working fleets. Yet something was happening. One Zarkali leader reviewed reports. Lost patrols, disrupted stations, faint energy readings that didn't match their systems. He placed his hand on a glowing surface. Find the source, he ordered, and end it. But the source was already moving. The Valor changed course again, this time toward a silent moon that once held a human base. The base had been lost early in the war. Most believed it was empty. As the ship approached, old lights flickered on the surface. Motion detected, said the sensor officer. Not much? Could be automatic systems. Elena nodded. Prepare for landing carefully, we're not alone down there. The ship touched down. Dust rose around it. As the airlock opened, the crew stepped out into the moon's cold, thin atmosphere. They entered the base. Inside, they found empty halls and broken machines. But in one room, a light still blinked. An old AI. It powered up slowly, its voice quiet and broken. Welcome. Back. The AI had been waiting, storing data, watching old signals. It had seen the early days of the war, the fall of the cities, the silence that followed. Now it spoke again. There are others. Elena leaned closer. Where? The AI displayed locations, places forgotten by both sides, deep places, cold planets, abandoned satellites. Small group still alive, waiting for someone. Elena looked at her crew. They're not waiting anymore, and once again the Valor took to the stars. No longer running, no longer hiding, they were looking and they were being watched. The stars felt closer now. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the weight of everything that had happened. The Valor floated quietly above the moon base they had just left, with its strange blinking lights and its lonely AI still whispering in the background. Inside the ship, something had changed. Commander Elena Cross stood at the center of the bridge, staring at a hologram of the galaxy. Dots flickered across the map, each one representing a signal, a hint, a whisper of possible survivors scattered across the stars. The AI from the old base had shown them where to look. Some were confirmed, some were just shadows, but all of them mattered. A new purpose had begun to grow among the crew. They weren't just trying to survive anymore. They were searching. They were connecting. "Begin decoding the first 3 coordinates," Elena said. The crew worked without question. As the ship moved toward the first location, a dense field near a dead sun, the engineer reported in. "Systems are holding. We managed to recharge the batteries while docked on the moon. Fuel cells are back to 60%. And the new relay systems? Online. Boosted range by 30%. Elena gave a small nod. "Good. We'll need it." They entered. The dead sun's orbit with lights dimmed. The air on board was still. The crew wore their suits just in case. In the black sky, the remains of an old human satellite rotated slowly. It had long stopped broadcasting anything. Its body was scarred, bent, forgotten. "Any signals?" Elena asked. The communications officer listened carefully. "Not at first, but now I'm hearing something. It's not audio. It's a pattern, like a heartbeat." The satellite sent out a repeating pulse, slow, steady, like it had been waiting for years. The officer leaned in. "It's a message, Commander, hidden in the timing. Translate." The screen blinked. The message appeared in simple words. "You are not alone." The bridge fell silent. Elena stepped closer. "That's not just a signal. That's a reply." They pulled the satellite aboard. Its systems were barely holding together, but the internal memory still had more information. Someone had placed it there. Someone had programmed it to wait just in case anyone returned. Inside the storage banks, they found logs, voice files, a woman's voice. "This is Dr. Mira Lane, Science Officer, Earth Research Group. If you're hearing this, it means you're still out there. We failed to send help, but we believe someone might survive. We left behind markers, beacons, places to meet again, if hope ever returned." Elena stood still, listening to the quiet, steady voice of a woman who had likely passed long ago. It wasn't sadness on her face now. It was something else. Determination. The next set of coordinates was hidden behind a planetary storm, a gas giant with deep blue clouds and wild lightning storms. There, tucked between the rings, was an old mining station, one of the earliest human outposts beyond the colonies. The Valor approached slowly. Sensors scanned for any signs of life. The station looked abandoned, but power still flickered on, the edge of its frame. "Dock us carefully," Elena said. Inside the station, they found more than silence. They found movement. Not people, but machines. Simple bots, moving along old paths, keeping the place running. They had been left with one task: protect the signal. One officer looked puzzled. "Why would anyone leave bots out here in the middle of nowhere?" Elena answered calmly. "Because they didn't expect to return. But they still left a light on." In a small control room behind dust-covered glass, they found another message. "This place is a mirror. If you see yourself in it, you're one of..." There were no names, no clear meaning, but the message wasn't for the past. It was for the present. Back on the Valor, the crew met in the common room, something they rarely did all together. Even the child they had rescued sat there, drawing pictures of stars and ships on a digital pad. Elena stood before them, not as a leader giving orders, but as someone sharing a truth. "This was never about one battle," she said. "It's about belief, They tried to erase us by making the galaxy forget us. But now everywhere we go, we find proof that they couldn't. A quiet voice rose from the room. So what do we do now? Elena looked around. Then she spoke clearly. We keep moving. We light every signal. We gather everyone we find, and when they look up at the stars again, they'll know we were here. The ship moved again. Slower now, not because it was broken, but because it was being careful. It was listening, watching, waiting for the next hidden voice, the next sign of life. And across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. They say a ship still travels the stars. They say it doesn't fall. They say it listens. And one day, it will answer. The stars above the Valor looked different now, not brighter, not closer, just alive. Every system on board had become more than a tool. Every screen, every panel, every small sound, it all felt like part of something bigger. The ship was no longer just a ship. It was a sign. Commander Elena Cross sat in quiet thought, her fingers resting on the edge of the command console. She was not alone on the bridge, yet the silence between her and the crew had changed. It was not fear anymore. It was focus. The next coordinate was already plotted. A red dwarf system with no planets. Just empty space, or so they thought. Long-range sensors are picking up a drift object, said the sensor officer. It's small, no power readings. Elena raised an eyebrow. Shape? Looks like a life pod. Old. Human design. The Valor changed course and slowed. As they moved closer, the object became clearer. A single pod spinning slowly. No lights, no signal. But it was there. They brought it into the hangar. The crew worked in quiet teams, scanning it, checking its seals, powering up only the outer shell. Inside the pod, they found no person. Instead, they found something stranger. A capsule. Sealed. Light metal. With writing along the side. Not printed, but carved by hand. If you are still human, open this. Inside the capsule was a data core. No military codes, no battle plans. Just one file marked only by a name. Project Ember. The ship's AI connected to it. The data began to unfold. Old files, video logs, messages from long before the fall. A scientist's voice spoke. Slow and thoughtful. This isn't a weapon. It's not a plan for survival. It's a story. Ours. I recorded what we knew, what we believed, and why we built what we built. Because one day someone might ask not what we fought for, but why we stayed human. The voice faded into a quiet message log. Thousands of personal files, memories from colonists, engineers, explorers, and children. Their thoughts, their hopes, their truths. It wasn't strategy. It was soul. Elena sat with the capsule in her hands, quiet for a long time. We were never meant to disappear, she said. Someone believed our voice should last, even if we didn't. The ship's crew gathered, watching small screens play video after video. A child's laugh. A teacher explaining stars. A doctor describing the smell of the sea on an old Earth coastline. And as they watched, something shifted. No one looked away. After hours, the pilot spoke up. I thought we were the last ones left, he said. But now I feel like we're surrounded. Elena nodded. We are. By memory. By everything they left behind. The next message from the hidden network came 2 days later. A low-frequency ping from a system far outside any star lanes. It was barely detectable, but it was meant for them. It said only, shelter found. 12 alive. Can't transmit. Waiting. The Valor moved without hesitation, past nebula clouds, across dark regions of space following a path only a few knew. At the edge of a frozen moon, they found the shelter, buried in ice under tons of frost and silence. Life signs, small and weak but real. The crew worked as one to bring them aboard. Among the 12 were 3 children. One had never seen open space. Another asked if the ship had windows. The last one cried when he saw stars. They weren't scared. They were waking up. One of the adults, an older woman, sat across from Elena in the ship's common room. Her voice was soft but full of strength. "You're not what we expected," she said. "We thought if anyone came back it would be a fleet, a force." Elena smiled. "We don't need a fleet to carry a message." The woman looked around, at the ship, at the crew, at the children playing quietly. "No," she said. "I suppose you don't." By the time the Valor left that moon, the legend had grown again. Not by stories shouted in battles, but by whispers carried in quiet signals. They said the ship carried people, real people. They said it didn't forget anyone. And deep inside Zarkali space, where the enemy watched and waited, new questions began to rise. What was this ship? Why hadn't it disappeared? What was it carrying that couldn't be erased? The answer was simple. It was carrying a memory that refused to die. And now, across the dark, across every forgotten system and lost station, others began to listen again. One ship, still standing, still searching, still human. The Valor floated at the edge of the known galaxy. Beyond this point, even old maps ended. No signal beacons, no settled planets, just silence. But silence didn't scare them anymore. Inside the ship, the crew moved with quiet purpose. The number of people had grown, those rescued from frozen moons, hidden stations, and long-forgotten shelters. Children played in the low-gravity corridors. Engineers rebuilt old systems. The food supplies were being stretched, but no one complained. Something else was growing with them, a signal, not just a message, but a call, a repeating broadcast created by the Valor itself, a voice across the stars. It said, "You are not alone. We are still here. Come home." They didn't know who might hear it, but they sent it anyway. Commander Elena Cross stood on the bridge, her eyes on a distant cluster of stars. Her face looked calm, but her mind was racing, because something unexpected had happened. A reply. Not a full message, just a change in space, like a shift in gravity. A soft flicker of movement on the edge of the sensors, and then a pattern. Not Zarkali, not human, something else. The crew gathered in silence as the data appeared on the screens. It wasn't a warning, it wasn't an attack, it was curiosity. As if someone out there had been listening, waiting, watching them move through space. And now, at the end of their journey, that watcher had chosen to speak. The signal was hard to read, made of light pulses and magnetic waves, but it repeated the same thing again and again. "Are you the memory?" Elena looked around the room. "What do you think it means?" the pilot asked. The communication officer said, "Maybe it's talking about us. Maybe the ship. Maybe Earth itself." Elena didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Send this." Reply, "Yes. We remember." The light pulses stopped for several minutes. The crew held their breath. Then a single symbol appeared on every screen. It was old, human, a simple circle, the symbol used in early Earth history to mean origin, beginning, and then something even stranger happened. A ship appeared, not one they recognized, no engines visible, no markings. It looked like part of space itself, shimmering, silent, moving with no effort. It approached slowly, stopping just far enough to show it meant no harm. A quiet hum filled the Valor's deck. The ship was speaking, not in words, but in feelings. Peace, curiosity, understanding. It was listening to the humans, to their memories, to their long journey through silence and loss. And in return, it offered something. Not a weapon, not technology. A map, a path to systems untouched by war, worlds still rich with life, safe places, hidden places. Elena stood still, her eyes fixed on the alien vessel. "They're not just offering us a way forward," she said. "They're asking us to carry something with us." "What?" She turned to the crew. Our story. The Valor had become more than a ship, more than a symbol. It was a living memory of what humanity had been and what it still could. So they made a choice. They didn't return to old battlegrounds. They didn't seek revenge. They followed the path offered to them through quiet space, to untouched stars. And at every stop, they left something behind. Not weapons or warnings, but signals, messages, archives. They shared the story of Earth, of courage, of mistakes, of hope. And others began to find it, not just survivors, but watchers, listeners, beings who had thought the stars had gone quiet. Now they knew otherwise, because of one ship, still moving, still carrying the memory of its people, still human,